What is up, guys? We're back talking Dexter Resurrection, and last night on Paramount Plus, we got our fourth episode of the season that was titled Call Me Red. And god damn it, they got me. They have fully got me. I am fully on board. Still got some issues here and there we'll talk about, but I am such a bitch. They got me right back. I thought I was out and they pulled me back in. This was the best episode of the season so far, which I said last week for episode 3, and maybe they're going to carry on that trend all the way through the season. But yeah, I mean, as a Dexter fan that didn't really like the way that it ended with the original run, did not like New Blood, had nothing but skepticism walking into this season. Yet again, here I am turning on the camera saying, holy shit, they seem to be doing it. They've got me hook, line, and sinker. I'm loving this. It feels like classic Dexter with some really nice new elements, and I'm enjoying pretty much all of those. And I am just so intrigued and bought in and invested in all the different storylines going on. So we'll unpack all of those. So the main storyline going on here with this episode is finally being introduced into whatever this little secret society, this little social club for serial killers is, where we've gotten hints with the Uma Thurman character breaking into the Dark Passenger's apartment in episode 1 and killing somebody else in episode 2 who is just ejected from whatever this club is, and then Dexter finding the invitation as he takes out the Dark Passenger in episode 3. And so now he is assuming the identity of the fake Dark Passenger, the imposter, as he called him, to gain access to whatever this club is and see what the hell is going on here. And I really enjoyed the back and forth between Dexter and Harry in this one. It seems like Dexter is much more resistant to Harry's like fatherly side, which is still Dexter himself thinking all this, but for all intents and purposes, him rejecting his dad's wishes and his dad's cautions about like, hey man, you need to be more careful. And Dexter even says like, I'm sick of being careful. And I like that version of Dexter. I like a version of Dexter that kind of doesn't give a fuck anymore. And he's like, whatever, man. Like, I've been following the rules for so long and it's been nothing but death and destruction. I'm going to have some fucking fun and introduce these bitches to the Bay Harbor Butcher. And so he, gets the little hoodie and gets the get up and glues on this little fingerprint. That seems awful convenient. I don't think that would actually work, but whatever. He glues on a fingerprint. And from the moment that we get into him with Uma Thurman, where he goes to get in the back seat and she's like, bitch, are you crazy? You kill motherfuckers in the back seat. Get your ass over here. That was great. And her giving a bit of a backstory to how she figured out who he was. And there's a line where she says, only took me 3 weeks. And him in his head, he's like, only took me 3 days. That was awesome. And when you finally get there and he has the fingerprint not work at first, gets in, and you get introduced to the Peter Dinklage character. From that moment on, like, this episode just absolutely captivated me. And essentially what we're at least led to believe right now is that you have Peter Dinklage, who is this rich elite guy that has a fascination with serial killers and treats it like something to be marveled at and something to collect and something to really try to surround himself with the best versions of them, almost like business partners in a way, which is very interesting and twisted. And he ends up letting Dexter into this massive secure vault where he has all of these mementos from all these famous serial killers, where it literally opens and the first thing that you see is John Wayne Gacy's clown costume. And the look of amazement on Dexter was hilarious, where even though he kills serial killers, like to a certain degree, he like looks up to them the same way that he did with the Trinity Killer. And I think there was even a reference in one of the early seasons where he used to collect newspaper clippings and things like that from serial killers, certainly the Tooth Fairy character, whatever season that was. So he probably had a fascination with Gacy and Bundy and all of them. And so you see the clown costume, you see Jeffrey Dahmer's fridge, you see the car seat from Ted Bundy, and then all of a sudden we get introduced to all these mementos. That was a nice little blast from the past from early Dexter seasons where he shows, do you know the Trinity Killer? And he's like, what the fuck? And he looks and it's that hammer that he actually used to kill the Trinity Killer, sitting there hung up like a memento. Oh, over here, here's the blood slides from the Bay Harbor Butcher. And he walks up and, he eventually had to give all those up to frame Dokes, and you could tell it was like letting a piece of him go. And so he kind of has like this little lovingly thing where he like runs his fingers over him like he always did. Oh, please don't touch those. Great moment. Hey, over here, this is the bed that the ice truck killer took his own life on. Holy shit. And Dexter's like, that's actually the table that I took his life on. And you get the little flashback to that. And that moment was so great of just integrating like real life serial killers into this, which made it have this very grounded feel to it, but also tying in all the events of the original seasons and setting up this idea in my head of where this might eventually go. Like, you got to think at some point, like, Peter Dinklage is going to end up on the table. And the revelation, whenever it comes out of, I'm not the Dark Passenger, I'm the Bay Harbor Butcher, not Dokes. I framed him. Those are my blood slides. I killed the Trinity Killer. I killed the ice truck killer. Like, if that scene ever comes where he lets him know all of that, like, I got to think that Peter Dinklage is going to be like, almost like a kid in a candy store, even if he's about to die, like, holy shit, this is the coolest fucking thing ever. And so there's just so much potential there with what is being set up that really, really intrigues and excites me. And something that I didn't really pick up on, but my buddy Charles did, there's a reference to the New York Ripper, which I'm not familiar with. I guess this is like a serial killer from, way back in the day or something like that in New York. And so since there were so many different references to the New York Ripper, with him pointing that one out almost as if it's just as significant as Bundy and everybody, and also the detective character that I still don't like made a reference to her, like the New York Ripper was somebody that got away or something like that. There's references to the Ripper that makes me wonder if that's going to play more of a part in this. Like, maybe Peter Dinklage is the New York Ripper and he had to like give up his life of killing, and now he just like lives vicariously through everybody else or something. I don't know. Maybe it'll be nothing, but it felt like it might be significant. Another thing I'm just very intrigued to see if that builds to anything. And then we get introduced to all of our special guest stars. So first we have Kristen Ritter, who I absolutely love, as the Lady Vengeance, and immediately Dexter's like, holy shit, she's kind of like me, where she basically takes out sexual predators, which is just as much of a cause that you can get behind as Dexter, maybe even more so. So there's definitely going to be something going on with them at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if she's the new Hannah McKay, and I'm here for it because I love Kristen Ritter, but very cool character. Love her in the role so far. Then we get the guy from Modern Family. I don't know his name, but he's like a family man, and he kills women and takes their ponytails, or maybe guys too. We have Neil Patrick Harris comes in as kind of the douchebag character, which he played really well, and he's somebody that skins people with tattoos. And then David Dismalchian comes in, which I don't really remember if they gave any kind of context to who he is or what he does. Maybe they did. But there was something that was a lot of leaks and a lot of pictures thrown out there months ago about all the big name actors that were going to be in this. And I had a concern that it was going to feel overstuffed. Like, are we going to feel like we're just doing all this stunt casting? We got Uma Thurman, we got Peter Dinklage, we've got all these other actors. Like, are we going to feel like there's too much for one season to do, especially a 10-episode season? And by the end of this episode, which I'm still kind of build to that, I feel like my worries of that have lessened significantly. So we have this whole dinner party where Dexter's just like taking it all in. Like, holy shit, I have a group of people here I can actually like be open and honest with. Remember the moment in season 1 where he tells the therapist that he's about to kill that he's a serial killer, and he's like, oh my God, it felt so good to say out loud. We've come a long way where a lot more people have learned since then, but I got to feel like there's still a bit of that left in Dexter, where it's like he gets to be his true self and not have any of the mask on. And that's got to feel so freeing, which is ultimately going to turn to tears, I'm sure. But I like the fact that he very much got to kind of enjoy that moment. And even them, they enjoyed him and how like open and honest he was, because they think he's just like this, you're the dark passenger guy. You're kind of the new guy on the block. And in reality, they're talking to the most prolific serial killer in the fucking room by a lot. Again, so much potential for when that comes to fruition, when people start to realize who he actually is. That's going to be awesome. And I called this joke. I don't know if I said it in my review, but I said it in a live stream that me and Charles did, where they're going to have this dinner party and Dexter's going to get fucked into eating all this vegan stuff. And so that was a great moment where he's looking at all this prime rib like, oh God, yes. Peter Dinklage lifts it up and he's got like some little bullshit cauliflower and he's like, yay. That was a good moment. And I really like so far. This was the biggest element that to me could have tanked the show if they had messed up and could have really jumped the shark, this whole little society of serial killers. But I really dug it from moment one. Eventually, we get it where, him and Kristen Ritter hit it off very quickly, and they kind of make plans to meet the next day to talk more about all this without all the bells and whistles around. And immediately he's like running with her and getting a little bit more of an idea who she is. You get a bit of her origins with her mother's boyfriend and her sister, which is just enough for me to really like her character, because obviously she's twisted like Dexter, but like Dexter, she's got kind of a code, and she's got a very specific type of person she goes out after. And so I'm really intrigued with what's building between them. And then that moment of flirtation that we get where Dexter's a much stronger man than I am, we'll just say that, where she's like, yeah, I'm going to go take a shower. You just kind of hang out, and we'll talk afterwards. And he like looks at her kind of creepily as she's starting to undress, and she sees him, like notices that he's looking, and then moves out of the way. For anybody that hasn't been in that situation, that is very clearly her like taunting him, like, yeah, come get in the shower with me. And even Harry knows. He's like, we're showering with serial killers now? And Dexter's like, fuck, I want to so bad. Damn it. Neil Patrick Harris is waiting at the bar for me. Fuck, I gotta go. Those two characters, whatever happens between them, if it's a love interest, if it's a flirtation, if they end up being, mortal enemies, whatever, I'm so intrigued with what's going to happen with the Kristen Ritter character. Then we have the Neil Patrick Harris character, which I very much was getting the idea because we got him having his little presentation, his little show and tell, and then he immediately meets up with them, and we're hunting his next victim, which Dexter very clearly is going to try to prevent. I very much got the sense that he was going to be a one-episode character, and I think that that's good. So he ends up meeting him at this bar and looks across the street, and it ends up being him. He's staking out his next victim, very similar to how Dexter did Rita in that flashback at the beginning of season 5, where they have their first date and he's really just tracking somebody else in the restaurant. But he goes off, says he has to go plan everything. Dexter looks, and it's going to take him like 2 hours with New York traffic to get back to get all of his tools, so he has to improvise. And we cut to Neil Patrick Harris hunting this girl, walking behind her while she's got headphones on, and he's got this little anesthesiologist mask that he's going to take her out with, and Dexter puts it on him and then wraps his ass up inside of the tattoo parlor, which was very poetic, just desserts, if you will. And I love the moment here where Dexter really feels like I'm slipping back into old ways, and god damn, it feels good to be back. And yes, it does feel good to be back, Dexter. So he goes to cut the cheek, and we're like, oh, here we go with the blood slides again. Yes. Oh, he's doing it. And Neil Patrick Harris ends up waking up. And I love the dialogue between them, where it's very different than any other interaction that he's had with all the other killers that, to a certain degree are not really as accepting of their fate as Neil Patrick Harris is, where he wakes up and he's like, oh, you fucking idiot. You're breaking the rules on day one. Can't wait to see how this works out. And, usually this is where people beg and scream. And he's like, dude, I've been on the other side of this long enough to know when it's inevitable. So he just like accepts his fate. Even asks, like, just do me the solid of knocking me out first. And he's like, nope, you don't deserve that, bitch. But I love the moment where, he does the blood slide thing, and Neil Patrick Harris kind of like berates him. Like, that's the most boring trophy in the world, which I disagree. But he berates him for that. And then Dexter reveals who he really is. He's like, I had to tell a lie tonight. I'm not actually whoever it is, whatever the guy's name was. And he goes, I'm Dexter Morgan, which is a significant thing for us because we know him. But then Neil Patrick Harris is like, who the fuck is that? And he goes, the Bay Harbor Butcher. And he only gets a moment of realization before the knife goes in, where it's like, holy fuck. Like, again, like I expect eventually, if we get to that scene with Peter Dinklage, is going to be like this fanboy moment with him. Neil Patrick Harris gives us a sprinkle of that, like, holy shit, it's you. And then done. And disposes his body the same way that he disposed of the last guy. So, again, this is the moment of the series. Whenever they screened this for critics, they only gave them the first 4 episodes. I was unfortunately not able to get a hold of the screener, but it makes sense to me now after seeing episode 4 why they let them screen up to that point, because this is really where the heart of the season really starts to take shape and starts to beat. So, yeah, I'm totally on board with what they're going for here. I hope they don't fumble it. It doesn't seem like they're going to. As far as Harrison, still kind of following in the same storyline where he's trying to dodge the investigation, only now the weirdo Boondock Saints ripoff investigator is kind of taking a back seat, and now David Zayas, Batista, is the one who's really up Harrison's ass. And so you get this really great scene where he goes to meet him. He goes to the guy who got the truck sold to him, which he tells him Harrison. He realizes Harrison's in New York, and then goes and finds him. And they have this interaction where he introduces himself. Harrison doesn't really know who he is, but then he says, my sister Jamie used to babysit you, and he has very clear memories of her, which he should, because she basically was his only parent for like the last 4 seasons of the fucking show. She saw him more than Dexter did in a fucking year. So it was funny to me that he remembered her, and they sit down, they have this really nice moment where they're talking about old memories, and then very quickly Batista, pushes the conversation over to Dexter, and Harrison lets him know that he still thinks his dad is dead. And Batista decides to hold on to that. He has a moment where he can say, actually, he's alive. He's in New York. That's why I'm here. And he just says, sorry for your loss, because he wants to kind of keep that in his back pocket and kind of play Harrison any way that he can with that information still withheld. And eventually turns the conversation to basically saying, I believe that your dad is the Bay Harbor Butcher, and so I want you to tell me that I'm right. And Harrison won't give him anything, even though he gives him all the opportunity. He even says, like, hey, your dad's dead. It's not going to hurt him, but it's going to help me get closure. And he won't tell him. Partially, I think, because of some kind of dedication to his father, where he still very much feels torn about what he did, and part of it because he doesn't want anybody else thinking that maybe Harrison has a dark side to him, which is eventually where Batista ends up landing anyway. But really good scene between them. Continuing to very, very slowly build this, but in a way that I don't feel like is dragging necessarily. And I'm intrigued with it, which is only a compliment. The story between Harrison and this girl that he is friends with, where he clearly has feelings, and she probably does too, but as somebody who has a kid, she's a little bit more hesitant to jump into that. So you get a good scene with them where, yet again, he's staying over, and he goes for it, and she doesn't receive it, and so he kind of leaves humiliated. I'm sure by the next episode, they're going to be hooking up, but I do like the dynamic between them. Like I said, it's very Jesse Pinkman, like season 3, season 4 to me, which I like. And unknowingly, his little love interest kind of fucks him, because Batista has this conversation and Harrison walks away clearly very upset, and she sees the badge and she walks over and goes, hey, like, what you guys not going to get it? Like, why do you think that he killed this guy? And he's like, what are you talking about? And so she lets it slip that there's been a murder in this hotel that has been done the same exact way as the Bay Harbor Butcher killings. A little convenient. That's another moment where it's just like, okay, like, I'll fucking forgive it because I like everything else, but awfully convenient that she said exactly what he needed to hear to tie the two things together, but whatever. So now Batista eventually goes to Boondock Saints ripoff, and the most tolerable scene we've gotten from her, because she's in it like this much, but yet again, listening to the same music, looking through all the stuff, isn't really convinced that Harrison isn't a suspect, but certainly doesn't have any solid case. And Batista asks her about the details, and eventually goes back to Harrison by the end of the episode, actually, and confronts him with this, and basically says, hey, it's interesting that this guy died in this hotel and was done the exact same way as your dad. And, it's either done by somebody who is your dad or somebody who learned from your dad. And I think Batista's play is eventually going to be trying to squeeze Harrison to where it's like, either your dad's going to go down for this or you're going to go down for this. So you choose. So I don't know where and when that's going to happen, but that feels like what we're going to build to, is that Batista very much is going to pull out as many plays as he has. And that's the biggest one, which is like, you clearly did this murder, and you wear it on your fucking face. Like, Harrison does not have a good poker face. I will say that. He looks guilty as fuck every single time he talks about this. So it's going to build to that where, maybe by the end of the season, Dexter has to emerge and go with Batista to save his son or something. I don't know, but I'm intrigued in what's going to go on with all that. And Harrison eventually walks out, and you're playing through all of these things that he said at the end of New Blood, when he was very holier than thou. And he's toying with whether or not to turn himself in or not, because he doesn't want to be his dad, but at the same time, he doesn't really want to go to jail either. And right when he comes to the point where he's maybe deciding to walk into the police precinct, Dexter shows himself for the first time. And I'm glad we did not have to wait all season for this. I was worried about that. The way that we waited all fucking season in New Blood for Dexter to have the conversation about his dark nature with his son. It's just like, great, we have one episode left. So I'm glad we got that out now, where he shows up, puts his hand on, heck, Harrison, don't do it. He turns around, Dad, and episode ends. So very intrigued to see what's going to happen with Harrison, how he's going to receive his dad being alive. Is he going to be pissed, scared, happy, a mix of all of that, and how they're going to, what information he's going to give about Batista, how it's all going to play out. Absolutely fascinated with that, all of that. The only thing that I will say that puzzled me about the Harrison storyline is everything going on with this watch, where, he took the guy's watch in episode 1 to go have it fixed, and now he gets the call saying it's ready. And so he obviously wants to go get it himself. He doesn't want them delivering it to the hotel and having potentially some new evidence brought in. But what puzzled me about it is after he gets the watch, why doesn't he just throw it the fuck away? Like, is this his version of a trophy and we just haven't really gotten that revelation yet? But, like, he gets the watch and you almost have like a Edgar Allan Poe, like, Telltale Heart type thing where it's ticking even though it's in a safe or it's in a different room. He can just hear it. It's haunting him, which was a nice detail. But I was puzzled with why he didn't just get rid of the watch. Why didn't you smash it? Why didn't you fucking throw it in an incinerator? Why didn't you toss it in the sewer? Like, why he's holding on to this vital piece of potential evidence kind of puzzled me a little bit. So that was the other thing here that was, I don't know what's going on with that. Eventually, I hope it leads to something. If not, it's just kind of a weird moment. We can show that he's still haunted by it. We have shown that he's still haunted by it without having that specific thing there in a way that I think doesn't make sense for the character. And that's pretty much it. It was basically focused on those 3 characters. There wasn't really any other side stuff going on. But I really loved this episode. There was a lot of great stuff in here. And I'm fully bought in. I like I said, I'm somebody that had nothing but skepticism, nothing but reason to be worried. Nothing but assumptions that they were going to break my heart again, and maybe they will. They still got 6 episodes, I guess, to do it. But I love what they're doing. So happy with what we've been getting so far. So if you guys are big fans of Dexter in this season, let me know down below. Are you as invested as me? Are you bumping up against some of this and think it's too much? Are you not liking what's happening with this season? Let me know all your thoughts down below, and we will revisit this in a week with episode 5. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my other Dexter reviews and coverage. I'm also going to put a ranking up here where I ranked all of Dexter's antagonists for you to check out. Please like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss all of my episode reviews to come. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.